Long distance rider, but you standing there for. Get on, get on, get out of the door. Play club music all about
A hippie. um, Self-employed, collector, chef, all around nice guy. I'm Sharan Honeyman. I'm married to Ben Commons. He's always been collecting since I've known him. Definitely the music and then the posters as well.
My mom was into opera and Broadway show tunes. My dad was into modern jazz. So kind of between the two of them, I got a pretty broad spectrum of musical influences. Well, I always liked music and I always liked art and I appreciate the fine art. I like Van Gogh, I like Picasso, I like Matisse, Monet. I go to art museums to see the art. So it actually was the marriage of music I like with art that I consider eye candy because you like looking at it. It's one reason I started, gathering as much stuff as I could.
We saw a lot of music. Everybody that worked at the restaurant, we always saw a lot of music, and he was a Deadhead for sure, that I knew. And he was taping music all the time, like live music.
One time I was video recording a concert, and you could see the red light, and the drummer kind of points up at me to say, "That guy's recording," and from then on it was like a piece of black electrical tape over that red light, just so you could stay incognito. But we were at a club, and it was like, oh, I have my camera with me. I'm up in the balcony, I'm taking video, and I see him pointing at me. It was like, oh, quick. He put it under the table. Sure enough, somebody came upstairs. Who's filming? Like that. And we left, because I didn't want to give up the tape. When I was working at the Miramar, one of the chefs took me to his house, and up in his closet he had a big roll of all of his old Fillmore posters. So it's like you had to take it one at a time to unroll it and kind of stretch it out and show it to people. So took out the roll, and one at a time we unrolled it. It was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. Oh, well, that's pretty cool. And then once the Art of Rock book came out, and it had like pages of all the different posters, it kind of gave people a better reference to see, what there was almost 300 posters in the old Fillmore series. It would actually show people, okay, here's all the different ones, and without having to look at them one at a time. But actually, a two-dimensional looking at a book is not the same as a three-dimensional actually being able to hold and touch the actual poster that was at the time 20 years old. But the influence in Pennsylvania wasn't as strong as when I moved out here when I was in my 20s. So, growing up as a kid in Philadelphia, there wasn't really that much that kind of made an impact on me. So maybe that's why when I talked about I saved the first flyer that anybody ever gave me, it was because it was different. When I was 13 years old and living in Philadelphia, there was somebody that was handing out flyers to a benefit concert. It was like Sweet Stavin Chain and Chocolate Electric Yum Yum, and it was all these bands that had such cool names. And it was just a black and white design, and it had like a William Penn on one side and like a hippie chick on the other side, and I just was like, oh, this is great. But I ended up keeping it, and that I still have today. It's one of the first things I ever saved, and that was over 40 years ago. Part of the reason I really like the San Francisco early posters is because they kind of challenged what the perceived norm was. So it's like they took it one step further about what people would consider, art. So I have to use the barn as a storage facility because I don't have any room inside the house anymore to store my collectibles. And obviously I got, some of my jackets, some albums, some poster art.
It's time to liquidate. Not time to collect anymore because it's taken over 2 buildings, our garage and the barn. Yeah, it was always amazing. Whenever I would tell people, they always thought it was interesting that he was able to successfully turn a hobby into a business and then make a living out of it. So he worked from the house and really started collecting large amounts, and purchases became trades. So, sometimes he'd have to trade and get more than he needed, and then he would sell the excess and trades, different things like that. The collection?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely don't want to be responsible for it.
They can't bury me with all the stuff I have. Well, originally I thought I would leave most everything to my daughter, and I don't think she's as into it as I am. So I actually had a goal of trying to buy my house with things that I had collected for years, and I'm pretty close at this point because we've been, being able to pay the mortgage from me selling collectibles. I've been able to do for almost 20 years now. But my hobby became my business, and that was one way that I could stay home and still raise my daughter. Well, people always ask me what are the favorite posters in my collection, and I immediately think of 3. The first one is the Beatles' last concert at Candlestick Park, which is done by Wes Wilson, who did all the early Fillmore posters. And it has a picture of the 4 Beatles with a yin-yang symbol in the middle. And the one I have has staple holes in the corners and a little bit of scuffing, and it's not in the most perfect of shape, but the day I got it, I was thrilled. And that one's probably worth about $5,000. The next one would be the Monterey Pop Festival poster, which was printed in 2 sizes. I have the smaller version. I had 2 of the bigger version, and they were just trashed. And if I'm going to put up the image, I'd rather it be somewhat in good shape. And I was still able to get $500 to $1,000 just for those trashed copies, which is why I sold them. And it's printed on foil paper, which was one of the first posters that they did that on. So depending on the way you look at it, kind of changes color, and it's basically a design of a doesn't list any of the bands. It's just a woman's central image, Monterey International Pop Festival. Third one would be my Woodstock poster, which since I got it, I've tried to get all the performers that I meet that have played at Woodstock to sign it. So I probably have 9 signatures on it at this point. Marty Balin from the Airplane, Arlo Guthrie, some members of the Grateful Dead. And just the other day, somebody told me they were good friends with Joan Baez. And of course, the first thing I thought about was, I need to get her to sign my Woodstock poster.